Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show.
Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. I'm Kevin Trimble, your moderator, and we're into Week 14. Rivalry week was last week, and you know what? There were some upsets, as we saw. The playoff picture got a little bit clearer, mainly for the top three, as we see. But here's the big question. Who's number 4? Well, as we know, Georgia's number 4 right now. How long is that going to last? We're going to find out what our experts think this week. But first, let's go back to our Week 13 picks. And as you know, we did one large contest. We combined the prize pool, and you're who's going to be the winners later on. But we had 10 games. And our first game was Oklahoma Sooners go to West Virginia, Morgantown. And you know what? 59-56, Oklahoma wins. Will Greer couldn't come up with it. Mark, talk to us.
It was a video game. These teams put over almost 1,400 yards on the board. But the reason why Oklahoma won, here's the key. They were able to run the football. They rushed for over 300 yards in this game. They were balanced on offense, threw for over 300 yards. Kyler Murray ran for 114 yards and a touchdown. I thought that was key to keep those possessions away from West Virginia. It came down to the end. Everybody's talking about how bad this Oklahoma defense is. Guess what? Ruffin McNeil's defense bailed them out, Coach, because they scored not once, but twice on defense to seal a victory.
Yeah, because West Virginia gave them the ball. I mean, they gave up 704 yards. I know Alabama gained 683, but I'll tell you what, Mark, it's hard for me to sit there and watch defenses play like that. But Oklahoma's a very talented football team. I'll tell you, Brooks ran for almost 200 yards. Of course, Kyler Murray had a great day. No doubt about it. Oklahoma was a better football team, but I agree with you, Mark. They don't get to 2 defensive touchdowns. Maybe they don't win. But unfortunately for West Virginia, Oklahoma did survive.
Mark, as you said, Week 1, the Mountaineers have a habit of disappointing. We'll see, will Dana Holgorsen be around much longer? Our second game, the Apple Cup. This was for the Pac-12 North title. 28-15, the Huskies won. And you know what? The Huskies won with defense because the number 1 offense in the country with Gardner Minshew had 152 yards passing. That's it. They ran the ball, and as Coach you often said, Chris Peterson, you need to make them have fun again and run some trick plays. They did a little bit of that. Mark.
I love their defense. Jimmy Lake, their defensive coordinator, I said this was one of the top defenses in the country when they play up to their standards, and they finally did. They're the best in the Pac-12, particularly their secondary, and they just shut down this offense for Washington State. They couldn't run it. They couldn't throw it. This is the fewest yards Gardner Minshew has had this season, 152. Didn't have a touchdown pass, threw 2 interceptions, but I thought the key was Myles Gaskin, Coach. This is a running back that not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons, the only one in Pac-12 history to ever do that.
It was a tremendous performance by Myles Gaskin. But also, Coach Peterson pulled out some trick plays, halfback pass, things like that, which he hadn't been doing.
He finally listened to you.
But here's what's really amazing about this. 4.7 yards per pass. But it was snowy. The field wasn't very, very good. It wasn't good conditions to throw the football. But nevertheless, for 5 straight years, Peterson has beaten Washington State by double digits each and every time. I did not think that would be possible this year, but let's give an awful lot of credit to the quarterback and to Gaskin and to the defense. Great win for Washington. Now they're going to have a replay against Utah in the championship game. But unbelievable. 4.7 yards per pass against Washington State. Doesn't happen very often.
Well, that was the exciting Apple Cup. But the Iron Bowl down in Tuscaloosa, it was close for a little bit, 17-14 and a half, but third quarter, Tua Tagovailoa, 4 touchdown passes in the third quarter. So what's Alabama getting ready to play in this SEC Championship game? Auburn getting ready to listen to all the grumbling once again down on the plains. Mark.
I'll tell you what, Tua is amazing. This kid threw for 5 touchdown passes, ran for 1. And here's the key in this game, Coach. Every time you think that somebody's going to be close to this football team, Alabama, it's almost like they turn the volume up when they want to. They step on the gas. They were able to do it in the second half. The defense was outstanding in the second half, putting pressure on the Auburn offense. They came with a better blitz package in the second half. But I thought the way that Tua distributed the football, Henry Ruggs III, Jerry Jeudy, he threw it to like 8 different players on this football team, and the Auburn defense couldn't keep pace with this Alabama offense. I look at this Alabama offense. They're so balanced and they're so smart. And this is another game where they didn't have a penalty. They're playing top-notch football.
Oh, no doubt. They had over 500 yards to 283 yards for Auburn. Alabama is an outstanding football team. Everybody knows that. I did not think this would be much of a game, and it really wasn't. Alabama's just awfully, awfully good. But I'm anxious to talk about their game against Georgia, because remember this, our top 4 final picks on the first show, I got 3 of the 4 are still there. Notre Dame, Clemson, and Georgia. I don't know what happened to Washington in your picks and some other ones, but Alabama might be the best football team, Mark. I got
to go back and talk about Alabama. I said Alabama, no penalties, no turnovers for Alabama again.
Okay. Well, Alabama might be the best football team I've ever seen, and I'm an old man.
Wow, that's a statement. This is the best offense I've seen Nick Saban ever have, and he may have the best team that he's ever had, because you just can't stop him. You know, it's like throwing popcorn at a battleship. You can't slow this offense down.
Well, and the defense showed up too, gentlemen, especially against the offensive genius down on the Plains. But Mark, you said a magnificent quarterback, an outstanding quarterback. Our next game had an outstanding quarterback, and his team was a 4-point underdog. And I'm talking about Michigan played at Ohio State, and Dwayne Haskins showed he can play with just about anybody. And when it comes to quarterbacks, 62-39, I think Urban Meyer owns Jim Harbaugh, but this was not close. Mark.
The 2 worst performances in the Big Ten this year was when Ohio State lost at Purdue by 29 points, and this one where Michigan got upset and barely embarrassed nationally. They couldn't do anything right, Coach. They had a punt block. They couldn't run the football. They ran the ball effectively a little bit in the first half. They got the momentum just before halftime where they scored a touchdown. They had a muff return kickoff where they recovered the ball, got another score. So what happens with about a minute to go? They let Ohio State march down the field, kick a field goal to go into halftime, and guess what? They got the momentum back. In the second half, they couldn't stop this Ohio State passing game because, 1, they couldn't cover the backside of the backfield, and 2, number 28 for the defense for Michigan. I'll tell you one thing, this offense for Ohio State found the weakest link on this football team, went after him again and again and again, and they made no defensive changes on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan.
Well, if you remember, Michigan beat Penn State like 55-7 or something like that this year. I'd have to put that down as a little disappointed. I was surprised that Ohio State dominated this game. You know, the number 1 defense in the country, they had 567 yards, passed for like 396 yards. Haskins did a tremendous job. But what really amazed me, they averaged 4.8 yards per rush, Mark, against an outstanding defensive team. I thought maybe they could throw some, and they did throw very, very effectively. I did not expect them to be able to run as well, and Weber had an outstanding day, almost 100 yards against a great defensive team like Michigan. But the thing was that Michigan could not keep up with the speed of the Ohio State receivers. They ran a lot of crossing routes, and it just became a 40-yard dash, and Ohio State won it, caught the pass. It was a dominating game. Now, it really makes it interesting because Ohio State put themselves back in playoff consideration again.
I thought the key in this game was, 1, the speed of Ohio State really stood out to me over Michigan, particularly on the perimeter. The other thing is the first drive of the football game. Michigan takes the drive. They go 8 yards on the first play. They take Higdon out of the game. They drop back for a pass and get sacked. From that point on, it was almost downhill. You just saw the guys just like their shoulders shrugged down, their body position shrugged down. I'm like, just stay with the run. At least you'll make it a competitive game. And they just got behind, and they just had to throw the ball against Ohio's defense and just couldn't get it done. Ohio State, it was a brilliant game plan by Ohio State.
But Michigan did put 38 points on the board, and that was impressive. Once again, Ohio State's defense has some vulnerability. But I tell you, you can't give Haskins enough credit. This young man impresses me each and every week. He is in the same classification as Murray and Tua from Alabama. They're 3 great quarterbacks in college football today.
Yep.
Well, and don't forget that Ohio State offensive line on Saturday. You watch that game. Dwayne Haskins had a lot of time. But our 5th game was Notre Dame. They've got 1 hurdle left to get to the golden road to the playoff, and it was at USC. And you know what? They were down at the half. But Ian Book, Dexter Williams made some plays. 24-17. They've secured a spot in the college football playoff. Coach, you called that. But Mark, I'm going to give you first dibs on this one.
Hey, Coach, were you like sweating just a little bit at halftime when Notre Dame was down? When USC went up 10-0 in this football game? You were a little bit nervous about that? Because it looked like USC was going to be dominant in this game until after halftime. I'll tell you one thing, you're lucky that USC turned it over twice in the red zone, because right now we'd be looking at a one-loss Notre Dame football team. Notre Dame came back and battled back in the second half, and they made plays defensively and on the offensive side of the ball and got the job done. But it was a lot closer than the experts thought.
For a team that ended up 5-7, I thought Southern Cal played an excellent football game. When you look at it, Southern Cal could not get the big play. Notre Dame did. They had one run over 50 yards for a touchdown. They had one pass over 50 yards for a touchdown. And you are right. The receivers fumbled twice deep into Notre Dame's territory. But it was an outstanding game, but it was one of those games that great football teams find a way to win. It was a very even game if you look at the statistics, yards gained, yards passed, yards rushed, but Notre Dame once again found a way to win because they get the big plays. And this is the thing that people don't understand. Notre Dame is in the same classification as Clemson and Alabama in this respect. They're a complete football team. They have an outstanding defense. They have a great offensive line. They have an excellent quarterback. They got a great running back, and they have fine receivers, and they got the best punter and place kicker, both senior, both outstanding. Notre Dame does not have a weak spot, which is why they're one of the four teams and why they have a chance to go all the way, as I picked them early in the year to win it all.
And they've also found a way to rig the system. They don't have to go to the 13th data point. While everybody's be playing in championship games, they're going to be sitting home and watching. That's not fair.
Well, yeah, I tell you what, the reason we don't have a 13th game was Kent State wasn't available to play us.
Well, gentlemen, there you have it. But you think about old USC, Clay Helton, he still keeps his job. Valiant effort will do that. But also, with our first 5 games that we just had, Coach, you picked 3 winners. Mark, you picked 4 winners. And I have to note, Mark, 31-point spread against Alabama. It was a 31-point spread. Solid work. But gentlemen, what I want to talk about right now is I'm going to go back and look at our second 5 games for this large grand prize contest that we have. But first, we're going to take a little break. Stay with us. Now let's look at the second half of our rivalry week contest. Now, we had 5 more games, and I'm going to tell you, this one's tough. I'm going to start right off. Kentucky at Louisville. And you know what? Kentucky's built the program. Louisville's program, it was ugly. It's not good right now. 56-10 in the Governor's Cup. Mark, please just go quickly.
We'll go quickly on this one. This one was called before it even started. This is a game that I say, you know what? This looks like one of the better offensive performances for this Louisville team, over 300 yards rushing, 2 backs over 100 yards. Then I looked at the opponent. Louisville threw up the white flag weeks ago, but still they got the job done. And if you look at Terry Wilson the last couple of weeks, I think 3 out of the last 4 games he's thrown for over 200 yards. So they are going in the right direction, but it was against a team that didn't even want to play in the game.
Well, it's amazing. Here's a guy who threw for 18 yards in one game, and now he throws for 267, plus he runs for another touchdown, threw for 3 touchdowns. In a rivalry game, unfortunately, Louisville did not compete particularly on defense.
Well, as we know, Kentucky awaits a bowl game. Which bowl game are they going to get? And it's going to be good because Big Blue travels. Louisville awaits a new coach, some discipline, and Coach will make sure we send them our Dr. Lou, who talks about how to play some defense. But we go out to Arizona for a territorial cup, and Arizona needed 1 win for a bowl game against their rival. I mean, can't write this script up. But Herm Edwards and his Sun Devils said, I'm going to end the season on a high note, and we're going to get to a better bowl game. 41-40. Talk to us, Mark. You live there.
Yeah, you know, this team was down by 19 points in the fourth quarter, and if you left the game and went to a restaurant with like 3 minutes to go, you probably missed the best part of this football game. But if you look at what Arizona State was able to do to put up 20 points in that fourth quarter, get some turnovers and capitalize on Arizona's mistakes, that was the key of this game. And I thought here was the big thing. If you watched Herm Edwards on the sidelines, cool hand Herm, didn't panic, didn't yell at players, didn't do anything, just stayed the path, and his players played that same way, and they played to the final bell and the final whistle, Coach. That's why they won this football game. They were aggressive at the end. Things fell their way. The ball bounced their way when they needed it. That's how they won this football game, with determination, and a team that didn't give up when they were down 19 points in the fourth quarter.
You're partially right, Mark. You're also partially wrong. Arizona State did not win this football game. Arizona lost the football game by turning the ball over, and plus, Arizona missed a field goal on the last play of the game. They make the field goal, they're going to a bowl, they celebrate. How disappointing it must be to have a 19-point lead and blow it, and then miss a field goal and not be able to go to a bowl, and you did it to your arch rival. Congratulations, Arizona State, but I feel sorry for Arizona because they beat themselves.
I told you don't count on kickers. Throughout the season, you're giving attaboys to kickers. This is one time where you don't give one to a kicker.
That's why you do it, Mark, because when they do come through, he's the eraser, and obviously how disappointing it is. But it was a great effort by Arizona, and an outstanding game. Anytime 41-40, I guarantee you, the basketball teams will score many more points than that when they play this year.
Gentlemen, I don't think it's the last time we hear from these two first-year coaches. And Kevin, someone will get those boys on a roll. But our next game, Utah State at Boise State. It was the Mountain Division Championship of the Mountain West Conference. That's what it was. Playing the game to who's going to go and pretty much host the Mountain West Championship. Boise State, Utah State. Boise State, once again, wins on that blue turf. 33-24. Brett Rippon and those boys they prove it's tough to beat us at home. Mark.
I'll tell you what, Brian Harsin, their head coach, has done a terrific job the second half of this season. The reason why is they started off 3-2 early. They've won their last 7 consecutive games. This is where they are right now. Alexander Madison, with running back, did a terrific job. He had 200 yards on 37 carries. They just wore out Utah State throughout this game, and particularly at the end when they had to have it. And they snapped Utah State's 10-game winning streak. I thought it was a terrific job by this coaching staff and this quarterback in Brett Rippon. I've been talking about him all season long. He's the Mountain West all-time passing leader. He got it done for this football team, but it was the offensive line and running attack that got it done for Boise State.
Now, that's a different Boise State team than we saw in the third or fourth week of the season. They've really gotten better, and now they get a chance to play Fresno State for the championship. They just beat Fresno State a couple of weeks ago. Now they're going to play again. If something happens to UCF, and UCF loses their game against Memphis, and Boise State beats Fresno State again, Boise State may end up in the major bowl and not UCF. Even though they have 2 losses right now, they're playing as well as anybody.
Yep, because it goes to the highest ranked conference champion.
Yes.
Well, as we know, we'll talk later about the implications across the board for them. But you take our next game, LSU at Texas A&M. Now, think it's a basketball score. Coach, we've talked about this. 74-72 in 7 overtimes. Joe Burrow ran for 6 touchdowns. Kellen Mond, you know what? The guy made plays. Now, some people think that the 12th man was wearing a striped shirt, but in either way, Jimbo Fisher got Texas A&M back to what they're used to being, and that's 8-4. Mark,
this was Big 12 football, brother. This is what it is for the Big 12. This is the SEC turning into the Big 12, throwing up almost 150 points in the game. And not only that, Kellen Mond was spectacular. What I'm worried about is Coach Orgeron. They gave him the Gatorade bath. They thought the game was over. Then they pulled it back. Then they had to go to overtime. The thing that I'm worried about these kids, they're lucky they don't have to play a game in a championship game this week, because it was like playing 2 games on one day. For 7 overtimes to do this, but the resiliency of this football team with Texas A&M, in the past, they would have just thrown up the flag and just said, forget about it, we're out of here, because LSU's owned them year after year after year, but under Jimbo Fisher, they never gave up, they kept fighting, and they found a way to win.
Congratulations, A&M was a great win. But I got to tell you, I'm sitting there, and the game's over. I mean, the guy throws the ball, it's intercepted by LSU, but a good call. His knee was down. They get another play to go. They complete a pass. Now, here's the thing. When I was coaching, they told me it would take 3 seconds to down the ball. Anytime you down the ball, automatically 3 seconds go out. There were 3 seconds on the thing, but they're playing A&M. There's 1 second left. They throw a pass, that's a touchdown. Now we go to overtime, and I tell you what, Mark, the 2-point conversion on Pat was incomplete by A&M. They ruled it was pass interference on Greedy Williams. I could not believe that call. I mean, that was a fictitious call, as I thought, but Great football game. I just hate to see overtime go to 7 or 8 like it did this time. But fun time. It wasn't over till quarter of 1. I got to tell you, I watched every second of it.
I wish you get this passionate about those home calls that Notre Dame gets when they're playing in their stadium against the opponent.
They don't get home calls, Mark. They get correct calls. There's a difference between home calls and correct calls, and you get that confused, Mark.
I heard a rumor that there might have been a guy in a striped shirt with some riding boots on, but who knows? Our next game, and this probably isn't a surprise, but we'll see how it affects the team as they go to the next week. Georgia Tech at Georgia, and as we know, Paul Johnson's triple option cannot play from behind. 45-21, the Bulldogs win. They take care of business. Next up, Alabama, an hour from campus. Mark.
If you look at the running backs, Elijah Holyfield and DeAndre Swift, we knew that they were going to run the ball effectively, almost 180 yards or 185 yards between them. But I thought it was Jake Fromm that was really effective in this game, throwing for a career-high 4 touchdown passes. I talked about it before the game that he would be instrumental in this game because Georgia can throw the football. Georgia Tech cannot. Once you get in a situation when you're ahead on Georgia Tech, they can't throw the football to catch up. They can't just keep running it. It's just not going to happen. Georgia has too many better athletes than Georgia Tech.
Georgia was at 45-7 this game. I know it ended up 45-21, but one time it was 45-7. But you can look at a variety of things. Georgia Tech was playing very, very well the last half of the season, but they were held to 2.7 yards per rush against Georgia. A wishbone, I mean, that just doesn't happen. 2.7, that was impressive to me.
Yeah.
I think Georgia has a chance against Alabama if their defense continues to play the way they are at the present time.
Well, Coach, that sums it up, and guess what? Coach, you were 3 for those 5, and Mark, you were 4 for those 5 for this week. Coach, you were 6 for 10. Mark, you were 8 for 10. How about that when it comes to picking winners?
I am not letting my wife pick my selections any longer. I mean, this first week I let her pick them, and she fouled me up.
Well, take the dartboard down out of the den. So, gentlemen, what I want to talk about next is some awards that are coming up, but I also want to talk about some new men on the job. We'll take a quick break, and we'll get to that. Thank you. Now that we're into week 14 of our college football season, we're already the conference championship games. We know next couple weeks some awards are coming up. And there's one award that, we always talk about, and that's the Heisman. Now, a couple weeks ago we talked about maybe the top 4, top 5, mostly all quarterbacks, but some of them played themselves out of it this week. And did anybody else play themselves into it? Mark, why don't you lead us off on who you thinking about the Heisman, who's still in? We know one name. But any new surprises?
I think probably Dwayne Haskins from Ohio State. He's had an outstanding season, and nobody's really talked about him because their defense has been so bad this year. I think he played his way in with Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa. I think those are the 3 people that are going to be on the final list. I think when I do my voting on Saturday night or Sunday morning, those are the 3 quarterbacks that I'm going to make it a key. And unfortunately, lately it's become a quarterback award instead of the best player, the most valuable player in the country award. But I think those are the 3 best players that people are going to end up voting for.
I agree with you. I think Minshew, for the quarterback from Washington State, played himself out, only throwing for 157 yards and 2 interceptions. The one guy that I thought really played outstanding was Greer from West Virginia. Mark, he threw for like 575 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. However, he did have the 2 fumbles that turned into touchdowns for Oklahoma. That was devastating, but I agree with you. I think those 3 quarterbacks are all going to have a chance to display their talents one more week to influence the vote. Week in and week out, all 3 of them have been outstanding. None of those 3 that I can recall ever had a bad game. Maybe their defense had a bad game. The quarterbacks did not.
Well, Coach, let me ask you this though: do those 2 fumbles with Greer in the game that mattered? Do they take him out of even being invited to New York, or do you bring him up anyway?
Well, I think I would bring 5 people up. I would bring him up definitely, and I'd probably bring maybe a running back up there, maybe Gaskins, maybe somebody like that. But I hope that they do bring 5 people to New York. Sometimes they bring 5, sometimes they bring 3. They've never had a situation where they only brought 1. A couple weeks ago, I thought they could only bring 2 from Alabama, and then they could save a lot of money.
Well, I think this is going to be a landslide, and we'll follow up on that. But I want to talk about some other big news this week. And I have a question. So we have talked about our coaching carousel. A lot of jobs still open, but 2 of them were hired. One, Les Miles, was signed to be the head coach of Kansas. And just yesterday, Mac Brown agreed to take over at University of North Carolina, second round for him. Now, a question I have, and Coach, I'm going to ask you first, and then Mark, I'm going to ask your opinion if you've ever been in this situation. So Les Miles is 65 years old. He's not 33 with a big menu playbook, you know. And Mac Brown is 67. They're qualified for Social Security. So, Coach, let me ask you this: you've coached a while. What are the benefits, and then also what are the challenges for a school and a team of hiring an older, more experienced coach who maybe hadn't been in the game for a little while?
Kevin, understand one thing. They aren't going to play. They're going to coach. You don't need to have strength and energy and things along that line. As long as your mind's sharp, as long as you have the energy level. If you ask me, do I think I would be capable of coaching today with the mind and the energy? Absolutely. My wife's health, though, is not going to ever allow that to happen. Age doesn't have a thing to do with it. Mac Brown is more of a chairman of the board. He'll go hire an outstanding defense coordinator, offense coordinator, recruiting coordinator, special teams coordinator, and he would be a great guy, and he'll do a great job. He had tremendous success at North Carolina. That's why they want him back there. As far as Les Miles, he has a desire. If you have a desire to coach and you have a purpose and you have a reason, you have an enthusiasm, you can still communicate with young people. As long as you talk about the millennials might be a little different. Remember this, what you say to that millennial player is important, but not near as important is your tone of voice. And your tone of voice is not near as important as your facial expression. If I went back into coaching, guy followed up today, I wouldn't grab him by the face mask. I'd say, Jim, that was a dumb thing to do. You have no idea how mad I am. You still have standards, but you never criticize a performer, but you must criticize a performance. Both these young men, age doesn't have a thing to do with it because they aren't playing.
Mark.
I think being in the 60s, I think is an advantage right now. I think you look at what Herm Edwards was able to accomplish being out of football for a while and then coming back and taking Arizona State, winning the Territorial Cup and going 7-5. I think a lot of athletic directors said, you know what? It's probably better to go with experience because that's the safe hire right now. Forget all these firms that are out there. These are guys that are proven commodities that have won in the past. We know they know what they're doing, and they have tremendous name recognition, so I think it's a plus for all these coaches.
Well, in my last profession, experience matters, and as we like to say, people don't change, environments change. The players from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, they wanted the same things the players want now. Environments change. Those that can adapt become winners, and Coach, as we know, successful leaders are those that can adapt. But speaking of coaches that need to maybe do some adaptation and do it quickly, they need an appointment for Dr. Lou Holtz because we need some defense.
This is Dr. Lou, and we have a real epidemic in college football. It's called bad defense. Some football teams are giving up more points than their basketball team. All defense coordinators look for a 12th man. There is no 12th man. I don't care whether you run a 4-2, 4-3, 3-3, is irrelevant. You want to improve your defense. You ask your defense coordinator to give you the following statistics on how many times you violated these 13 commandments. Number one, how many loafs did you have? There's some things that not take talent, and effort is one of them. How many missed tackles did you have? We're not playing in a powder puff league. You have to be able to tackle people. Number three, how many foolish penalties did you have? Number four, how many missed assignments? There have been great players that have been deaf. There's never been one that's been dumb. I don't care how much you know. I'm only interested in how much your players know. Number five, how many yards did they make after the catch? Nobody beats you throwing and catching. They beat you because the quarterback scrambled or the receiver cuts a 6-yard pass and go 40 yards. Number 6, how many times did your defense get separation? In other words, you've got to get your hands out here where you can get rid of them. If you don't, you're dancing while the ball carrier runs by you. Number 7, how many times were your shoulders not square? As long as your shoulders are square, there's nowhere to go. And plus, you can change directions. People turn their shoulders like that's bad defense. How many times did you not keep your proper arm and leg free? Everybody has a gap. You got to be able to control it. These are basic fundamentals. Also, how many times were you on the ground? You should hit with nothing on defense except your hands, your arms, your elbows, and your shoulder pads. You don't need pads from here to that because you get knocked down, you'll be on the ground. If you're on the ground, you cannot play the game of football. And how many times did you rush the passer with 3 men on one side? You should always have 2 on 2. I don't care whether you're sacking or not. People are throwing the ball so quick. If you're in the proper lane, you're in their throwing lane. They can't see it. They can't see the receiver. You can knock it down. And last thing, I hear break on the ball. You don't break on the ball. What you do, you break on the front arm of the quarterback. When the quarterback's front hand comes off, that's when you break on the ball. Nobody throws the ball like this. People don't break on the ball today. The front hand. And then, let's have cushion. Everything. A receiver's not going to catch a 10-yard pass till he runs 30. He's not going to catch a 3-yard pass till he goes 10. Everybody said don't get beat deep. They bail, run out. No, as a defensive corner, you're thinking 3, 10, 30. You start out slow, you back it. If it's a quick pass, you react. They back off a little faster. The longer they wait, the faster you go, so eventually you cover the deep ball. You don't just run out. These are just 13 basic principles. If your defense coaches those things, make sure your players do it, you will have a great defensive football team. And if ain't out, check Alabama. They do these 13 things. Have a great day. See you next week.
Well, now it's time that we talk about Week 14, and this is championship weekend. And we've got 2 sets of 4. Call them the Final Fours, plural. And the reason I say that is the first 4 games we're going to talk about, they have national championship implications to go along with being a conference champion. Whereas the next 4, they also have conference championship implications, but they also, with some things happening and a little help and a little here and there, a New Year's Day 6 Bowl for some of these teams could be the answer. But we're going to start off with the one that everybody's looking at most. The SEC Championship is Saturday. Alabama, number 1. Georgia, the new number 4. Rematch from the 2017 National Championship. We saw that game. Alabama at that game prepared for Jalen Hurts, or Georgia prepared for Jalen Hurts, not for Tua Tagovailoa. Will they be prepared this time, Mark, up there in Atlanta? Talk to us.
Well, Georgia's defense was much better last year than it is this year, and Tua Tagovailoa last year only played in the second half, and still he went for 166 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, so he knows how to play against a good defense. And you look what he's done this year. He's got 36 touchdown passes. He's rushed for 5. He's completed 70% of his passes. That's all well and good. He's got tremendous talent around here. But I'm looking at this Alabama defense. They only give up 114 yards rushing on the ground going against Georgia's offense. If they're able to shut down that running game or at least slow it down, it's got to put a lot of pressure on Jake Fromm in this football game. I think Alabama has too many playmakers on offense, and their defense is better than the Georgia defense. And Nick Saban's coaching experience, Kirby Smart's a heck of a coach. But, Coach, I'm sticking with Alabama. 38-24 over Georgia. It's going to be a great game, but Alabama will pull away in the fourth quarter.
Well, Georgia's number 4 because I think the committee did not want to have to make a decision between Ohio State and Oklahoma. They'll make one next week, obviously, but I think Georgia's a very good football team. They're playing much, much better after they lost their football game. They can run the football, but Alabama is very, very special. I look for Alabama to win the game 40-24. I know we have 30-24 up there, but either I printed it up wrong yesterday or you made the mistake on it, but the fact is, right here I got it, 40-24 Alabama. As I said, I think Alabama might be the best football team I've seen, the most complete football team. However, there's never been a horse that can't be rode. There's never been a rider that can't be thrown. Maybe this is a week Alabama finds out they have clay feet.
Well, as we know, Nick Saban undefeated against his former assistants. Our next game is the Big 12 Championship. This is a rematch. Oklahoma, Texas at AT&T Stadium, Jerry's World in Dallas. This comes down to who can play defense. Texas needs to spy Kyler Murray and just protect the football. Dicker, the kicker from Texas, is ready to go because remember, he kicked the winning field goal in September, 48-45. We're going to see where this goes. Mark.
This is the first time they've had a rematch between Texas and Oklahoma in the same season since 1903. And if you look at this Oklahoma offense, everybody knows they're spectacular. Kyler Murray's been terrific all year, 71% completion percentage. He can run the football very effectively. But they found another running back in Kennedy Brooks. In the last couple of weeks, he's gotten better and better, over 100 yards in each game. I think the pressure's going to be on this Texas defense and their offense to keep up with Oklahoma's scoring. I still think Oklahoma got a little bit of confidence last week, scoring 2 touchdowns defensively. I think that's going to be an edge in this football game. I like Oklahoma to beat Texas because it's always tough to beat a team twice in the same season, 40-29.
I feel so sorry for Texas. They beat Oklahoma and they don't even get a year to brag about it. They get 8 weeks to brag about beating Oklahoma. Now they have to play again. It is true, it's hard to beat a team twice in the same season. Let me tell you why. Because when you won the game, you say, well, that's good. Let's do the same things we did. When you lost, you're going to say, we need to make some changes, we need to do this, and you take a different approach. I look for Oklahoma to win this game. I wish Texas could win it, but I look for Oklahoma to win the football game 48-40, but it will be another great game. But poor Texas, you don't even get a year to celebrate.
I thought it was interesting that Tom Herman, the Texas head coach, came out and said, we're about a year ahead of schedule right now. You're not supposed to say that to your team going into a game like this. You're supposed to say, we're right where we want to be. We want to be in a championship game. This is where we are.
Well, let's say what he says after the game. I never worried about what a coach says before the game. So what they say after the game is always important.
Well, we're going to see, because for Oklahoma, along with Georgia and Ohio State, who we'll talk about, they got to win, and they're going to win pretty convincingly because they have a shot to get into that college football playoff. And I'll tell you who else does. Our next team, but the key is it's the ACC Championship, December 1st in Charlotte, North Carolina. Clemson playing Pittsburgh. The Panthers are in the championship, and Pitt, let there be no question, Pitt has a history of playing spoiler, and that's what they can do. But as we know, Clemson gave up 500 yards to South Carolina. Is that going to happen on a cold night in Charlotte? And of these first 4 games, it's the only one that's outdoors. Pitt 7-5, Clemson's 12-0. Mark, talk about your alma mater. Fire us up.
Trevor Lawrence is completing 66% of his passes. First-time starter as a freshman coming in. He's spinning that deal all around. You look at ETM, the running back. He's been spectacular. 19 rushing touchdowns. Look at this vaunted defense with Christian Wilkins and all these guys. These guys are all NFL caliber players. But watch out. And here's the trap. Pitt has never, ever lost to Clemson. 34-3 in 1977 Gator Bowl. I should know because I was in that game. And they beat them in 2016 when they were supposed to lose. They beat them at Pitt State. They beat them in Clemson, not Pitt Stadium. This is a team that can upset football teams. But I have to go with my head and not my heart. And it's strictly business. Clemson wins 44-27.
Oh, that's unusual for you to use your head, Mark. I'm impressed with that. But let me tell you, I agree with you. Pitt is a very, very dangerous football team, but they're a totally inconsistent football team. A team gets beat by UCF 45-14, gets beat by Penn State 51-6, and wins their division. They do have a unique ability to upset teams when they're overwhelmingly favored. But I think the fact that South Carolina threw for 500 and some yards against Clemson really has Brent Venables, their defensive coordinator's attention. I think it's going to be a very, very difficult week of practice at Clemson. I think you're going to see a completely different defensive football team, but also Clemson has some real playmakers on offense with the receivers, the running back, and the quarterback's been exceptional. So I look for Pitt to lose 45-14.
Well, we'll be cheering for Mark May as he's inducted into the 2018 class of ACC Legends that week.
Congratulations. That's amazing. And you never even played in the ACC and you're going in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Mark. Well deserved.
Thanks, Coach. The older I get, the better I was.
We'll talk about that a little bit later. But This next game is just a big question mark. It's the Big Ten Championship, and Ohio State, 11-1, is playing 8-4 Northwestern. The question is, which Ohio State shows up? Is it Ohio State that blew out Michigan? Do they show up? Or is it the Ohio State that had trouble against Maryland and had a lot of trouble against Purdue? So, what are the implications? Rose Bowl, if Northwestern wins, they haven't been back to the Rose Bowl since their coach played for Northwestern. Outside chance for the playoff for Ohio State. Mark, which one's it going to be?
I'll tell you what, Northwestern, Pat Fitzgerald was just named Big Ten Coach of the Year. This is a football team that took Michigan right down to the wire and almost won that football game. But I think when you look at this and you break it down, there's no way in the world Ohio State shouldn't win this game handily. They have too many players on offense, too many skilled players, too many players on the perimeter that can make big plays, either wide receiver, the running backs out of the backfield, or just running the ball with Dobbins and Weber. And I look at this football game, Coach, the thing about Northwestern that really bothers me, they've done extremely well in the conference, but they did not win a non-conference game. They lost to Duke. They lost to Akron. What type of Northwestern team shows up for this one? I still have Dwayne Haskins having another big football game. They're going to give up points to Northwestern, but Ohio State will hang on by the skin of their teeth, 41-28.
Well, I think Northwestern's played very well in the conference. With a big win over Michigan State, you go, wow. But Michigan State turned out not to be very good this year. Then they beat Wisconsin. You go, wow. But Wisconsin's not very, very good. Northwestern and Coach Fitzgerald's done a tremendous job. He's a wonderful coach. He's also a wonderful individual. He was a great player. But I believe that Urban Meyer understands one thing. After you have a great performance, that's when you really get on the players. When you lose like they did to Purdue, you don't get on the players then. You try to build their confidence up. But after having this great win, I promise you they'll have a very physical week of practice. They'll have great focus, great attention. I look for Ohio State to win this game 51-20, and it's going to be a real shame if Oklahoma or Ohio State does not get an opportunity to go in the playoff. It is a shame that Washington, if they win their conference, doesn't have a chance to play for the national champion. Who's to say your conference is better than our conference? Every conference champion should have a chance to go. Notre Dame has a chance to go, and then the best non-5 team gets a chance to go. I think it's a shame, but one of them are going to be eliminated.
So you're telling me that you're telling me that major conference champion should have a chance to play?
Yes.
In the playoff.
That's
Notre
exactly
Dame doesn't play for a
great.
conference championship.
Huh?
Notre Dame doesn't play for a conference championship.
No, but what I'm saying is you take those 5 teams, then you take the 3 next best, and one of them would be Notre Dame, maybe UCF or Boise State. Then the best other team. We go to an 18 playoff. I've been saying this for 5 years. That's totally unfair to a conference champion not to have a chance to play for the championship. You look at it in basketball.
Coach, couldn't agree with you more. That is the greatest debate. But we also know about this game with Ohio State. Though it may not be written in the College Football Playoff Committee's mandate, style points do matter. It may not be official, but style points do matter. Urban Meyer's going to know that. I think they may try to run it up, as they say.
So it's okay if you play crap football for 12 weeks and then you play good football for 2 weeks. Oh, let's put them in. Really?
No, they win the conference championship, they're in. That's all. It isn't complicated. And now the whole year is a tournament, so to speak. You want to be in it? Win your conference. You don't win the conference, you have no argument whatsoever.
So I love my alma mater, but if they're at 7-5, if they get in at 8-5, and Northwestern gets in at 9-4, they deserve to get in.
Absolutely. If they're conference champions, they deserve to get in. And let me say this, whoever played them in the first round would be glad they're in.
Well, as we know, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Michigan, and Georgia, they're all rooting for each other, which is crazy. Everybody wants Georgia to win. We're going to see how that goes, and will the dominoes fall? But our second 4 games, what they do is they come under the, these are big bowl implications, but one of the bowls that we want is the New Year's Six Bowl invitation to the non-Power 5 team. Now, the highest ranked non-Power 5 team. So our first game there is the ACC Championship game here in Orlando. It is a rematch, and it's the first of 3 rematch games within this 4. And the rematch, it's UCF in Memphis. And playing here in Orlando, Memphis 8-4, UCF, as we know, is 12-0. 31-30 was the score at a driving rainstorm in October in Memphis in that last game. But here's what's different. Mackenzie Milton is out. We know that Darrell Mack Jr. is a replacement quarterback. We're going to see Darrell Henderson, best running back they've played against this year. How is this going to play out, Mark, without Mackenzie Milton?
Well, it's going to be difficult because Darrell Henderson doesn't have that much experience, one. And two, he's completed less than 50% of his passes. He doesn't have a touchdown pass on the season. He's more of a runner than a passer. And when you had Mackenzie Milton, not only his ability to run and throw the football, you had his leadership. Everybody in that huddle knew who the leader was. Everybody in that huddle knew who to look to, particularly when times were tough. Now, against this Memphis team, you already talked about their running back, Darrell Henderson. Spectacular running back. He's been terrific all year long, almost 1,700 yards rushing. He's led the entire conference in rushing this year, set an all-time record. That's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to stop him. But Darrell Mack Jr., the quarterback, that's the issue. Can he make big plays when he has to? I'm looking at their defense to lead them. But my question is, can a player come into a championship game, a conference championship game, and get it done that doesn't have a lot of experience or very little at all? He did start one game this year. That was against ECU, and that still was not a great game for the offense for UCF. I still have Memphis upsetting UCF. The winning streak is over, Coach, 34-31.
No way that is going to happen. Because let's remember this. It was a great game. UCF won by 1 point. Memphis did not score in the second half. UCF shut them out, their defense. And Mackenzie Milton, as great a quarterback is, he doesn't play defense. That same defense is there for UCF. UCF also has excellent receivers. They also have great running backs and an outstanding offensive line. I think the quarterback, we don't ask you to be Mackenzie Milton. There's only one of them. Just be yourself. Protect the football. Hang it off. And I think the football team is going to rally around him completely. They understand this is a conference championship, a chance to finish our second season undefeated. I look for UCF to beat Memphis 38-28. The game is going to be played here in Orlando, and I'll tell you, the fans support them tremendously. They'll do even more so because the fans know that UCF needs their support without Mackenzie Milton.
Well, what you have there is number 8 ranked UCF. So, like I said, they're sitting there a bunch of hoping that Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Georgia, that they all lose. They could still have a chance, but I don't think so. But our next game is all about winning a championship and an outside shot at maybe a New Year's Eve Six Bowl. And I'm talking about the MAC Championship, Ford Field in Detroit, 10-2 Buffalo, playing Northern Illinois 7-5. And oh, by the way, Northern Illinois lost their last 2 games. But think about Buffalo. Tyree Jackson, as we said, Mark, he's as big as some of the linemen you play with the Redskins. He's their quarterback, and they are 10-2, and they know how to win. They had that tough game, obviously, with Army. But what do you got right here, Mark? Buffalo, Northern Illinois.
I think for Northern Illinois, I think their question is, can they score offensively? You said they lost their last 2 games. They're 125th in total offense. That's going to be the key to this game. But in a championship game, players will rise up. You talked about the quarterback, Tyree Jackson, 6'7", 245 pounds. He's well over 250. But he's an athlete. He can run the football. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns, 25 passing touchdowns. Buffalo, this is the first time in their history that they've won 10 games. So they're fighting to win number 11. And remember, Coach, no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Boys. And Buffalo wins 33-31.
Well, you know, Buffalo was playing Army and they're undefeated, and oh, there's so much excitement in Buffalo, and the fans, and Army absolutely destroyed them. I do like this Buffalo football team. I like the quarterback. Northern Illinois has lost their last 2 football games. It's amazing they're even in the championship game. I think Toledo might be the best team in that division at the end of the year. However, when you go by the records, Northern Illinois is there, but they aren't going to win it. I look for Buffalo to win 31-24, and Northern Illinois has a great tradition of winning. They have an awful lot of pride there. The players will step up. It'll be closer than most people think.
Well, here's the other outside chance at the New Year's Six Bowl for that non-Power 5 team, and it's another rematch. Fresno State and going to Boise State, playing on the blue turf. As we know, both of them are 10-2. Last time Boise State beat them 24-17, close game. Fresno has not won in Boise since 1984. What you've got is Brett Ripien versus Marcus Marion, and 2 quarterbacks are going to go at it. 2 great coaches. Mark, talk to us about this one.
Well, obviously, Boise playing on the blue turf, they're tough to beat, and Fresno knows because they haven't done it in a long time. And you talk about Mark Rippon, but I talk about Alexander Madison, the running back. He's got over 1,200 yards rushing. He was key last week, 200 yards rushing. I think he may be the key to this game. This could be cold, it could be windy, it could be snowy. Fresno State has to face that. Boise State's used to that. It's going to be a closer game than people think, but they played close just about every time they played this year. And I still like Boise State winning this game at home. It's going to be close, 33-31. I like those close games. I like Boise State in a close one.
I think Boise State really is almost impossible to beat on the blue turf. And it was a rematch a couple weeks ago. What I worry about is once they lost, Fresno State's going to make an awful lot of changes, but Fresno State's a very, very good football team. But I think Ripien is playing so well at quarterback for Boise State. I think Boise State's going to prevail 27-24. But regardless, the winner of this football game will go to a major bowl on January 1 if UCF does not prevail against Memphis.
Well, and as we know, if you talk about these last three games, call them non-Power 5 teams, something else interesting. All of them have some coaches who could be looking elsewhere, and we may hear their name again probably by Monday or Sunday. Now, our last game is the Pac-12 Championship, and as it should be, the Pac-12 Championship is all about one thing. Who's going to the Rose Bowl? And we have Washington at Utah, and it's also a rematch, 21-7. Washington won that game in September. But as we know, Jake Browning has 38 career wins. Myles Gaskin showed why he's a four-year senior, and he's rushed for 1,000 yards for 4 years in a row for Washington. We saw that against Washington State. Rose Bowl on the line, Mark. Talk to us.
Well, you mentioned it all. Myles Gaskin, he's healthy now. Last week he had 170 yards and 3 touchdowns in one of their biggest games of the year against Washington State, the rivalry in the Apple Cup. I think he runs the ball against Utah again. Utah's a very feisty team. They play solid defense. It's not going to be a really high-scoring game, but they're going to both put points in the 20s. I still like Jake Browning. Not a great season by him. He's thrown for 9 interceptions this year, but I like the quarterback position for Washington. It's more stable. I got Washington beating Utah Friday night, 27-21.
Well, last time they played was like the 4th week of the season at Utah, and I think Washington prevailed something like 24-14, 24-7, something like that. I think Washington is an outstanding defense football team. I certainly hope Washington wins because I think they'd be the most respectable opponent in the Rose Bowl for Ohio State or whoever else happens to be there, the opponent there. But I love Gaskin. I love the defense of Washington. I look for them to win because Utah right now is not playing as well as they did earlier in the year when they lost to Washington because they've had an awful lot of different injuries, etc., which certainly has curtailed their performance. Washington 28, Utah 10.
Well, there you have our fast fours for Championship Saturday in this Week 14. Some have national championship implications. Some have big bowl game implications. But I'm going to tell you, those at home, get on the app, compete in this contest, compete against Mark and Coach, because we're going to see how these games go. Now, like Week 13, we had one contest. We had 10 games for the full Monty. We were going all in, all the marbles, 10 games. We're going to announce some winners that we had. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to announce the first winner. In third place is Kathy Sears, and she gets a $50 Amazon gift card. Mark, tell us about number 2.
Number 2 is Brandon Dane, a $50 Amazon gift card.
And number 1, Justin Shealy, $500 Amazon gift card. Wow, congratulations.
Well, $500 Amazon gift card. There you have it. You put all the prize pool together, come up with a great contest. That's what we have. I could do my Christmas shopping with that, I think. But we also have Week 13. We talked about great performances already. And Mark, why don't you tell us who your attaboys are?
Well, mine go to 2 quarterbacks that had outstanding games. Tua Tagovailoa for Alabama. The quarterback was terrific in their 52-21 win over Auburn. In the Iron Bowl, he passed for 5 touchdowns. He ran for 1 touchdown and did not throw an interception in the game. My second player is quarterback Kellen Mond from Texas A&M. It did take him 7 overtimes to get to 72 to 74, but the 74 got it done. Their win over LSU, he had 6 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and 1 touchdown run. 7 total touchdowns for quarterback Kellen Mond.
You know, it's really difficult to come up with your attaboys because there's always so many outstanding performances each week. For example, Shermer at Vanderbilt, had an outstanding game at quarterback, and they beat Tennessee. Both teams were 5-6. Somebody's going to go to bowl, somebody isn't. Unbelievable. Vanderbilt beat Tennessee, but that's not who my winners are. My winner goes to Kennedy Brooks in Oklahoma. He's a running back. 182 yards, average 8.7 yards a rush. That is impressive. My next one is a little bit of a surprise. It goes to Terry Wilson, the Kentucky quarterback. 340 total yards and 4 touchdowns in the romp over Louisville. He passed for 261 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he also averaged 7.9 yards a rush on 10 carries and 1 touchdown. Congratulations. This is the same quarterback that threw for 18 yards in a complete game earlier in the year. Now 3 straight games over 200 yards passing.
Gentlemen, I want to look at this weekend because, Mark, I know what you're thinking about this weekend, but, Coach, I'm going to hit you up first. What games you focused most on and see what's going to happen?
I think that one would be Alabama, Georgia. Then I think you have to look at Oklahoma, Texas, and Ohio State, Northwestern. The reason I say that is those 3 games are going to determine who the Final 4 are. I don't believe there's any way in this world Clemson loses. But Alabama, Georgia, I think Alabama prevails. But who's going to be more impressive? Is it going to be Oklahoma or is it going to be Ohio State? And how well is that going to influence the committee? Last year, Ohio State won the Big Ten and the championship. Went to the Rose Bowl, won the Rose Bowl, was denied the opportunity even though they were 12-1 because they got beat by Iowa so badly. Are they going to hold the one game that they lost to Purdue against them? On the other hand, Oklahoma's one loss is Texas. They get a chance to right the ship against Texas and beat them decisively. So, anxious to see who's going to be number 4.
Mark, talk to us about this weekend.
It's going to be a fun weekend for me. I'll be in Charlotte at the ACC Championship game. Hopefully my Panthers will win out. It'd be a great time if they upset them. But what I want to talk about, and more importantly, is when you look at the selection committee and decisions they have to make. They're supposed to get the 4 most worthy and the 4 best teams in the playoff. They say that 13 data points count. They say that conference championship counts. Every time it comes down to something that matters, they start backpedaling. I have nothing against Notre Dame. They've had an outstanding season. But is it fair for Alabama that's undefeated, for Clemson that's undefeated, for a 1-loss Ohio State, for a 1-loss Oklahoma, to have to play a conference championship game while Notre Dame sits at home? They don't have to go through the rigors of trying to win one more game against a tough opponent to try to get to the playoff, and I don't think that's fair. Either Notre Dame's got to come up with another game or they've got to join a conference.
Oh, hey, Mark, I got to tell you, they don't allow you to play 13 games. They have
Hawaii
a
does.
Champion. We are. Your prejudice against Notre Dame comes out each and every week. You cannot hide it. Notre Dame wasn't defeated. They did everything they needed to do. They're going into the playoff and get used to it because they're going to be there a long time, Mark.
So you think it's fair that they sit home and watch where Alabama is undefeated and Clemson's undefeated and they have to play a conference championship game where they have a chance to lose and get knocked out while they sit at home and watch?
Absolutely. That's their choice whether they win or not. Notre Dame doesn't have a thing to do it. You go there, you go champion, you win it. You don't win it, you go home. Notre Dame did everything they needed to do, and they'll continue to do that, Mark. Case rest. I am sorry that Judge Reese isn't here because I would have won this case hands down.
Well, gentlemen, that was in the old life, but I will tell you right now, I'm looking forward to this weekend is we start preparing for what we're going to have on the Crowds Line is the New Year's 6 college football contest, and it's going to have a huge prize, and we're going to announce that on our December 18th show, and it's going to cover all the playoffs, which are both on the 29th, and then the 4 New Year's Day games, and that's going to be exciting. But I'm also looking forward to, Mark, hearing about you in your induction. And we were talking about that the other day, and I told my kids, I said, hey, listen, this is guy, Mark May has been at the peak of his profession in everything he's done. And he goes to college, and yes, he was a history major, and he graduated with a degree in history, but he was also one of the best in America at what he did. 1980 Outland Trophy winner. And then you played for the Redskins. And, I kind of compare some of the other fan bases we've talked about here with the Redskins fan bases. And how can you not love that? And, oh, by the way, you've got 2 Super Bowl rings. Who has won? People dream of that, and you've been at the top of your profession. as an analyst, as a broadcaster, as a personality, as a professional, you've been at the top. So I will tell you from the Crowd Line, Mark, we're looking forward to hearing about that and hearing how the weekend goes, because that's exciting that we get to be a part of your life and as you celebrate that with your family and with the Pittsburgh Panthers. But other than that, gentlemen, I'm excited about getting ready for the playoffs.
I have to sit here and listen to that eulogy on that guy right there. But I also want to add one thing that you did not. He's a great friend. He's a great friend and a great person. Often wrong, but he's still a great friend.
Well, Coach, both you gentlemen are good men, and that's all you can ask for, and I like that. But I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing you two gentlemen soon. And that will be it for this Week 14 show on the Crowd Line College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. God bless.
From the 30, Johnson out of the shotgun. Dropping back, pressure on, throwing over the middle. Has Williams. 10, 5, touchdown!